Are you ready to talk about Cocaine Bear? I think it's time.
It's time.
All right. Rotten Tomatoes has it at a critic score 71%. Kind of surprising. All right. And then for an action comedy, we have an audience score of 75%. IMDb has it as at a pretty mediocre 6.5 out of 10. Cinema score also pretty mediocre, B minus. Synopsis reads, inspired by the 1985 true story of a drug runner's plane crash, missing cocaine and the black bear that ate it, this wild thriller finds an all oddball group of cops, criminals, tourists, and teens converging in a Georgia forest where a 500-pound apex predator has ingested a staggering amount of cocaine and gone on a coke-fueled rampage for more blow and blood. What a synopsis. Ricky Flicks. Anticipation going into this movie. This is like one that's obviously much discussed. It is a true story in some regard. I don't know how much was exaggerated. I think by the end of this movie, by the third act, you could say, okay, they really made this like Hollywood-esque. What was your anticipation going in?
No, I think the bear in real life ate some cocaine and then died immediately. Like this is all made up, except yes, there's a plane going down. They actually kept the same like pilot's name. They kept the same pilot, and yeah, and then obviously the bear didn't die, and then they made everything else up. But
It's got to be some facts.
yeah, right. So the very first minute was true. But I think my expectations going in was like I see the trailer and you're thinking this looks fun. I want to see that in a movie theater with a bunch of people in it. And that's exactly what it was. That's what I was expecting going in. But then you see the Rotten Tomatoes scores start coming through. You see an 88% after 32 reviews. And you're like, "Whoa, like what are we working with here?" And then like it slowly goes down and now it's at like 150 something reviews and it's at a 71. And by the time we saw it, it was around right around there. And to be honest, like that's kind of what my expectations were going in. Cause yeah, like Elizabeth Banks, I like her as an actress. She's fun. But like this is her first full feature. Then you have all the like O'Shea Jackson, who we don't really know yet. We've seen some glimpses, but nothing really. Alden Ehrenreich's on the comeback trail. Ray Liotta, last ever role here, and like a fun villainous type role. And then we got Gary Russell. Like we have a bunch of like just how are all these people fitting in a movie together? But it just feels like it's gonna be a fun movie. Not necessarily a great movie, but a fun movie. That's what my expectations were going in.
And I think it builds off the idea you brought up earlier. The poster got me so hyped for this movie. Like it just you knew you were in for a great time when you saw that bear looking out and then like cocaine just blasting from behind him and he's just howling to the moon. Like that type of moment, it's just like this is you're buying into the absurdity before you even watch it. And that's what you have to do to enjoy this movie. When I see like the critic scores and then I hear like certain podcasts and I read some reviews, I think some people took this movie too seriously. And I think that is a victim of the fact that we don't get comedies anymore. And I loved walking into the theater, sitting down. We have a crazy story to tell you, by the way, about like our theater experience. But like when we sat down and watched the trailers, and it was just comedies. I was shocked. Like you had the Burt Kreischer movie, The Machine, right? That was being promoted. It had like the Red Band trailer, and then it had the Will Ferrell, like almost R-rated, like animal, like voice,
Dog movie.
voice characterization of these dogs called strays. That looks like it's from the makers of Ted. It just feels like we're getting back to like comedies being a regular in movie theaters. And I think this movie, you just buy into the absurdity. That's what you did in the 2000s with a lot of those different concepts. This is a bear that does cocaine. This is a golden opportunity to take this is a true story and like just adopt it and make it into your own. And that's what Elizabeth Banks did here. Makes a couple questionable decisions, but the concept itself, I think it was juicy. It's the title of the movie is Cocaine Bear. Like, if you can't get people to go to the theater based on that title, like you're doing something wrong. And it did okay at the box office. It finished number 2 behind, obviously, Quantumania. which had a 70% drop from its opening weekend. It made $23.5 million. Should we go into our experience at the movie theater, Ricky Flex? Because it was kind of wild.
This guy, doctor.
You tell the story. You're good at it.
All right, I'll try. So, all right. So we get into the movie theater. We're seeing it Sunday night, right? We decide, all right, 7:15 show, last show of the night for Cocaine Bear. Let's go see it. So I go on the app, AMC app, A-lister, not a big deal. The show's almost sold out. There's not 3 seats in a row.
On a Sunday night?
Yeah. So it was like, wow. It was Dr. O, me, and my girlfriend. And I was like, all right, you can get 2 in a row. And then there's a guy next to us. And then an empty seat. It's like, all right, well, we could just like get in there and then just ask the guy to move to the left one and then just switch with us. And then boom, easy. Right. So I make sure, all right, get there early. So I get there early, get in the seat with my girlfriend, waiting for Dr. O, sit down, and then this guy comes up. And I notice, I'm like, oh, this is the guy. All right, I'm just going to ask him. So the guy's coming up to me. I'm like, hey, is this your seat? And he goes, yes. And he's like, not having it right now. I'm like, hey, we were wondering, so we bought the seat next to you. Is there any way, we were wondering if there was a chance. He interrupts me and says, I'm going to hold you right there. You don't have to wonder. I want my seat. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, you don't have to wonder. I want my seat. And I was just like, all right, bud. Like,
sort of an alpha by himself, not in the back row, not in the second to back last row, the third row. And I was like, all right. I was like, no problem. You bought this seat. So then I just moved right next to him to the seat I bought. And he goes, what are you doing? I go, oh, well, I bought this seat. And I was going to say like, oh, you didn't let me finish, but I was going to be a jerk to him. And he goes, oh, I was like, yeah. And I sat down next to him and he goes, well, I was expecting nobody to be next to me. And I go, buddy, what do you mean? Like, no one's next to you. This is a sold out show. And he goes, let me just go on the app to see if there's another open seat. And he realizes it's a sold out show. And he goes, I had COVID 2 weeks ago. Dude, he said that to me as well. Keep going.
And I was just like, bro, like, if you're that nervous, like, what are you expecting here? And he goes like, all right, you guys can sit next to each other. And then he sits in your seat. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't tell him that you're sitting there. So I was like, all right, we don't have to sit 3 in a row. But I text you and you had to say, like, don't say anything.
Let me take over from here. Right. Let me take over from here. So I sit. So obviously this guy's between me and Ricky Flicks and his girlfriend. So Ricky doesn't really give me a heads up. I don't check my phone. I got my popcorn in hand. I'm ready to see Cocaine Bear. I sit down. I turn to the guy next to me and I go, hey, bud, like, that's my brother. Can I sit with my brother? And he just goes like, I just moved. And I was just like, oh, dude. I took a step back. I'm like, you don't have to move. And then he goes like, I mean, I thought I was going to be sitting alone. I had COVID a week ago. I'm just like, what? What? You had COVID a week ago? Did you not check? Like, when did you buy these tickets? Like 2 weeks ago? It was absolutely sold out. And so the guy goes like, fine, I'll move over. We moved this guy literally 3 seats over so we could sit together. And I was praying that someone bought the seat, like a group of people, they wanted to sit together next to him. So they would keep pushing him down the row until eventually he was at the end and he would have just thrown a fit. Like, to me, that would have been the most ideal podcast story in the history of movie podcasting.
I forgot to mention before you got there, Doctor, he goes to me. He goes, look at this. And he shows like the app and it's an empty theater. He goes, I'm seeing Ant-Man after this. In the Dolby Theater, there's only 5 people here besides me. And this is a sold out show. Why wouldn't they switch the theater?
It's like, dude, I don't know. I need you away from me. And then we sit down and watch the movie. And by the halfway point, the guy starts snoring. During Cocaine Bear, the most live wired, entertaining movie, probably even next to Quantumania, the next entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this guy almost pulls a move where he is snoring so loud that he is waking himself up from snoring. And then all of a sudden he's laughing. And dude, he laughed at everything. I think he actually impacted my viewing of the movie because I thought the movie was funnier than what it actually was because he was laughing almost instantaneously when a joke was told.
But like, how is this guy gonna survive Quantum Mania after seeing Cocaine Bear
He
at
was a
like 10
zombie.
o'clock at night?
He was a zombie. Like the fact that he was watching that, like honestly, like he probably laid down in the middle of Quantum Mania.
Probably.
Yeah, he needed to really like. I don't think the recliner was enough for this dude, to be
Mm.
honest. Do you think this movie was as funny as he thought it was? Do you think like the jokes landed?
I thought they landed, but I don't think they landed as hard as he thought they were.
Well, he was
Like,
laughing at every moment of the Guardians of the
right.
Galaxy trailer,
Yeah.
So
It's like he was watching that like that was the first time he saw it, you know? And
and
like
there's no way it was the first time he saw it
right, because he
because that he
sees so
was
many
going to see
movies.
Quantum Mania
Yeah,
in a double feature. Like he's definitely watched this trailer
on a
in his
Sunday
mom's
night.
basement like 4 times, you know?
Yeah, like no way. So it wasn't as funny as he thought it was, but it was still very funny. I had a great time. Like this was a great movie theater movie.
I think it was hilarious, to be honest. And I think people that were judging it for like, oh, the jokes didn't land. Dude, it's a comedy. Like not even like The Hangover went 100%, you know, in
Nothing
terms
goes
of its
100%.
their joke accuracy. I thought this was a good time at the theater. And I think people are being really harsh on this movie, whether it be on the CGI or the jokes being told. For what it was, I think for the most part, understood the assignment. Elizabeth Banks understood the assignment. There was a couple like story um mistakes, like in terms of like the characters being written and the background on them that maybe we didn't find necessary. But in terms of a movie about a cocaine bear, the cocaine bear scenes hit. They were funny. And they bought into the absurdity, which is what I liked. There was a moment where the bear was snorting a line off of basically a ripped off arm of
Yeah.
someone he killed. And that's when I was just like, yeah,
This movie
this
gets it.
this movie gets it. And it feels like an early 2000s comedy, like a mid 2000s, where it's just like we're not going for right the most accurate. We're just trying to entertain audiences. We're not like the most accurate story or like the most realistic. They're just like we're buying into the comedy aspect. And this movie was gory. It was raunchy at points. But
Very.
I think when it really bought into the idea of this is a bear that did cocaine, we're gonna play into this as much as possible. That's when the movie was at its peak. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think the CGI riffs people have with this movie are way overblown.
Yeah.
I think this isn't a Marvel movie where they're investing literally $100 million into VFX. You know what I mean? Like they did enough for the bear, and they're saying like, oh, like it moved too fast at points and too slow at other times. Honestly, I thought it was pretty good. I think that when it did like move way too fast, where it was like so unrealistic, I think that bought into like the comedy aspect of it. Like when it's climbing trees like so quickly because it's like there's cocaine up there, and I know for a fact, and I'm racing up there faster than I normally would. Even if I was higher on cocaine, I know that there's cocaine up there, so I'm gonna go faster. That's why I think the CGI might have been like, yeah, sure, I understand what you're saying, but to be honest, it worked because of what it's doing. You're buying into that absurdity, like we were talking about. So I don't like that gripe people have. If people say it's not as funny as they thought it was going to be, like it depends, I guess, on your expectations going in. I think for me, it was definitely funny enough. I had some really hard laughs. I think I'm not going to go through the cast, but I think everybody in the cast had their own, as in adult actors, had their own spot where I was laughing from something
Yep.
they said, at least one or two things. So I think every single cast member here had their moment. And I think overall, what the main thing here was that you had to nail the actual cocaine and bear aspects. And
Yep.
you did. They understood the assignment, they got it done. And you are right. That one that I think it's a great example with the snorting the line, like those little things, like not necessarily the huge like one liner that O'Shea Jackson Jr. might have. It's those little things that you have to have in these type of movies where it's like, yep, the audience is like, yep, I understand what I'm watching. That's where it's like, yeah, this movie really worked for me.
Yeah, it's like the moments where you roll your eyes and throw your hands up in the air and you accept the movie for what it is. And at that point, it works, you know? Um, in terms of flaws, like the movie, when the bear is not involved, the movie is just not entertaining. Um, a lot of people are pointing to like the Carrie Russell and her daughter, that storyline. Obviously, not the most enticing, right?
Bad.
Honest, like whenever they went to that, I was rolling my eyes. They can't really hold this screen together. The kids can't really hold the screen. They really get away on some really immature jokes, and those are the ones that really didn't hit for me. You know, I think the joke rate it was at like a 70%. You know, in terms of accuracy, it was right around there. But Carrie Russell, she looks good. Like I thought she was like she nailed the vibe and she's got the pink outfit on. Like I thought she was slaying it a little bit, right? Good for her. She's cashing that check.
I also wanted to say, just to
Sorry,
mention with
yeah,
the
go ahead.
pink outfit, the 80s vibe was good. The
Needle
music,
drops on point. Needle
yeah,
drops were
very
actually
good.
on point, and the soundtrack really had the audience going. And I think like in terms of like performances, who really stood out? I mean, I'm not gonna say anyone really stood out because the bear is the one that stands out, and that's like the most entertaining sequences. Like when Carrie Russell in the sequences with the bear, it's worth watching. You know, when Carrie Russell is not with the bear, you kind of roll your eyes. When the park ranger and Jesse Tyler Ferguson are without the bear, I'm just like, get to the bear. You know, that's what I want to see right now. But the only parts where I was like kind of accepting, like the bear's not involved, is actually Alden Ehrenreich and his interactions with O'Shea Jackson Jr. I thought they can hold the screen on their own. I thought their chemistry was decent. I'm not going to say it was perfect, but it was enough where I like almost like where I was wanting to see a story that was strictly on them and like the drug dealers trying to obtain the cocaine from the bear. And it seems like these side plots weren't necessary. You know, just get away from that, make the story simpler. And I thought Isaiah Whitlock also very good in this movie. Like
Mm.
it seemed like he understood the assignment and it was almost a little bit of a meta type of character based on like who he was in The Wire and like who he was like almost a softer version. Like I thought it worked, you know, it played well into the comedy.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be too predictable, this movie, and it wasn't. I think it was predictable at, like, some things because obviously it's like, it's a generic movie, to be honest, like, the plot, very generic, but I think some of the decision making here was very clever and kept you on your toes, and I thought that was very good, and I think you're right. I think the Alden Ehrenreich, O'Shea Jackson, Ray Liotta dynamic was the only one I was really invested in besides Isaiah Whitlock. Um, the Carrie Russell and the kids, not great. The park ranger was a little funny with the bear, but the bear not in it, then I'm not interested. Things like that is where you needed the bear. And I think that's why we're in the theater. And that's where the movie sometimes kind of I wasn't as invested in the movie as I would have been if it was a little shorter or a little less subplots.
It seems like they wanted to make it almost Tarantino-esque, the way like these characters they divert and tell their own story and they're obviously connected by this bear and then they somehow converge at the end. But the ending I found so terrible. Like
Bad.
when they
I
all
agree.
come together, I'm just like, this is so cliche. And it seems like I'm almost wincing when I'm watching it. I'm watching these kids try and stand up to these drug dealers. I'm like,
That was the
God,
predictable part I was
and
referring to.
I was just like, and I'm okay with spoiling it. I don't care at this point. Like at that watching that, I was just man, like if I almost thought to myself, what if this movie just had the perspective of the bear and not the characters that are interacting with the bear? You know,
Hmm.
I almost think like if the like I don't know how you would do it, but it's
Yeah.
like I think that would be an interesting reference point during this movie.
I
It's
honestly
hard. I don't know how you
I
execute
think
that, but
if
like
I was doing this movie, you either pick the park rangers or the drug dealers. You do an anti-hero with the drug dealer, or you do the hero aspect with the park ranger going against the drug dealer and the bear. I
mhm.
think the kid aspect was where the big fault was. That was just a waste of 30 minutes.
Just get rid of that
Yeah,
completely. And this movie already was an hour 30. I want to say it was
it was
95-ish
hour 30.
minutes.
Yeah,
And I think that it didn't feel as brisk and as short and as brief and as concise as the runtime says. You know,
agreed.
there is a moment of the movie where it's like 25 minutes and the bear's not there. 30
Yes,
minutes, the bear's not
yes.
there.
You
And
were
I'm just
wondering where
like,
the bear was.
after like the beginning, like the intro scene, and you have like this violent moment with the bear, and then you don't see it for 30 minutes. I'm like, get back to the bear. And a
Right.
lot of times you spend that 30 minutes is with the kid, Carrie Russell's family, in a backstory that the audience could care less about. Know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and just to clarify with the park ranger comment I made, I wouldn't have the same park ranger if the movie was centered around it. I would have a different style of park ranger being the hero, but just having a park ranger as your hero to star in this movie instead of having the Kerry Russell element of it. And I don't think Kerry Russell was bad. I just think the writing of that plot was bad.
It's just like no one wanted to see that part of the movie of Cocaine Bear. They didn't want to see
You're
a
not
bunch of kids,
invested in that.
and they tried to make it interesting, obviously, with some of the kids' actions, but still, it's not enough for me. It's not
No.
enough. It's more, but the Alden Ehrenreich and the O'Shea Jackson, and then the Isaiah Whitlock, and when those three interact, I'm like, damn, this is like pretty freaking funny.
Even the kid,
Like
the blonde-haired kid, that was pretty funny too.
right, but when it's just like the one-on-one with the kid, and then like they're trying to sell us on the emotional aspect, like that's not what we're here for. Let's just
You
get
were
to
never
it.
invested, like, that O'Shea Jackson, Alden Ehrenreich were best friends. Like, you're just like, "Oh, they work together."
Yeah, it's just like I never got that vibe that they were best friends, even beforehand, where they said, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't contact you," like, because Alden Ehrenreich's character is a widower. He's like, "I'm sorry that I didn't
Which
contact
was
you after I
good.
lost
I that
you."
was a good spin. I didn't see that coming through the trailer. I didn't read the between the lines. That was good.
Mhm. Um,
You could have done more with that.
do you think, as before we get to scores, do you think this movie is gonna be memorable? Because right now, obviously, the title and, uh I like it's just something unique compared to what we typically see in movie theaters nowadays. Do you think like 10 years or 15 years down the road, people are going to be talking about Cocaine Bear? Or do you think it's a flash in the pan?
That's a tough question because I think the idea and, like, the creativity around they took a story where a cocaine ate a bunch of cocaine and died immediately into this. I thought it was good, but the problem is the whole plot as a story in general, all these different subplots combining into one wasn't memorable.
No.
And I don't think, like, I don't wanna, like, tease the power rankings, but I kinda will. Like, what's memorable about The Revenant? That freaking bear absolutely going at Leo. That's memorable. This one, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna remember this bear. Like, I'm not gonna remember this bear like I remember the Revenant bear. I don't think this bear, and I don't think it's like because Elizabeth Banks did a poor job or anything with the bear. I think the bear was the best part of the movie, like we were referring to. I don't think it was that iconic at all. So I don't think I'm gonna remember this that well. But if someone brings up Cocaine Bear to me and say, "Have you seen it?" I'll be like, "Yeah, like that was a pretty good movie. I had a great time in the theater. Maybe I'll watch it again for 30 minutes in a good scene if it's on cable or something."
I think that title has staying power. It's just like it's Cocaine Bear. Like it's just people are going to reference that movie, and we get such few comedies in this day and age. This is one that I think people will be like, "Oh, I saw that one," or it's like I think it's going to have a big streaming life. Usually, comedies like typically when we were growing up, like straight to DVD, not straight to DVD, excuse me, but like theaters to DVD. Like those
Yeah.
sales did well. And I think like that in this day and age, it's like, okay, then when this movie goes to streaming, how will it do? Like this only made 23 million at the box office, which is a lot for a comedy. But when it hits whatever streaming service it goes to, I feel like it's gonna be the number one. If it goes on Netflix, it's gonna be the number one most streamed movie, you know? And I do think it's gonna have the staying power. It's not because of the cast, but it's just because of the concept and the idea. Like I think it's gonna be there. Just my thoughts though.
Guess the budget for this movie.
Man. All right, a lot of pressure. I'm usually good at this stuff. So I think a lot of it went to the CGI, even though it wasn't that great. I'm gonna go with 30 mil.
30 to 35 million.
That was dude. I'm so good at this. Dude, I'm so good at this. When's the last time I missed in this type of category? I'm like over under like about 10 for like every time I
So
get.
this already made 28 million at the box office so far. It's gonna make its money back. So when you hear rumors that they're going to do a sequel with a shark or something, I actually believe it.
It's hard not to make a sequel about this
It's just
because
taken over
it's
pop
Hollywood
culture a
today.
little bit. Yeah.
It's just Hollywood today. What do you get for a score?
This is a tough one because I liked a lot of things in this movie. And again, like we gotta appreciate the comedies when we get them, right? And we accept them. But I think the story, which is, what a movie is centered around, was poor. I think it was
It was
poorly
bad.
executed. So I'm trying to balance the two. And it's tough, but I'm gonna have to agree with Rotten Tomatoes here. I'm gonna give it a 70.
I think there's never been a more fitting movie to have a 69 out of 100. So I'm
Yeah.
giving it a 69. It's right there. The absurdity, 69 out of 100.